And I'm Guy, and this is your home for everything Alberta independence. And we have big news coming in today. The court said they're going to be able to count the petitions, as well as some not so good news coming out of Edmonton. We'll get into all that and a lot more.
True. But before we start, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe because, again, it is what helps us out the most. We try to read most, if not all, your comments live. However, for super chats, we pause the whole show and discuss them, and those really help us out as well. And we have memberships.
Absolutely. And we got a nice little group of people today, I see, and yes. A lot of chatter. Why don't we get into some of the comments, and then we'll get into the big story, which is the court ruling. We're going to go into that pretty in depth.
Yes, so let's start with Glenn Gunn, who says, good evening, Nat and Guy. Good evening. Says, interesting to see what is to be said about the signatures being counted. Yes. Yeah. And then we had a bunch of messages from Todd, and unfortunately, I'm sorry, some of them didn't show up, but I'll start reading them because it is about that thing that happened in Edmonton. Yeah. So I think it is important. Todd, hello, Todd, says, hey guys, that was scary yesterday in Edmonton. I was on the sidewalk across from the Meridian where Donnie was attacked. Stupid me left my phone in my truck half a block away and had Patsy short leash attacked to me. Todd says, couldn't get across to help with all the traffic, had to watch helplessly. It sucked, took a while for it to settle down last night. And then
and you can leave it there for a second. And that was an absolute tragedy. We're going to go through most of that when we get to the video footage, so everybody's going to kind of know what we're talking about there.
And Todd also says there were others screaming at him just before, because Todd was there apparently.
Yeah, why don't we go back to the comments after we get into that section? Because a lot of people just
Todd's comments.
Yeah, a lot of people just aren't going to know what we're talking about right now.
So let me skip those. Sorry, Todd. We'll come back to them, and then we'll head into the other comments. Michael Drader. Hello, Michael Drader.
Matter of fact. Oh, it's too early in the episode to play that video because there's violence within the video. So once we get into it, we'll read all of your comments, Todd. Sorry about that.
I keep saying hi to people. Michael Drader says, this South Mexican is back. Sorry for my absence. You were dearly missed. So thank you for being back. And Rafa, another prodigal subscriber, thank you for being here, says, hello, Nat and Guy. Hello, Rafa, and thank you for being here. And David W. Carlson says, hello, Nat and Guy. We got a long way to go and a short time to get there.
Absolutely.
Which is why we're going to start turning up the heat.
Yeah, but it looks like the timeline may have been shortened today, or at least potentially shortened. And this is the direction we want to move in. We want to make sure we don't take one single step back right now. If they try to re-lengthen this timeline, we want to make sure we put a lot of pressure on Danielle Smith as well as the UCP.
True. And then Beulah Hillier, hello. Thank you for being here, says, watching from Alberta. This is great news.
Yeah, absolutely great news today. And we needed great news like that. But yeah, we'll talk about it in a minute.
And Della Robinson says, where is City of Edmonton and the mayor condemning this sort of violence? And we'll talk about it in a little bit. That says everything about these corrupted municipal politicians. Edmonton, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But speaking of, let's actually go into breaking news so we can actually start talking about the news.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Concentrate. Let's start with the Western Standard saying, quote, judge allows Elections Alberta to count Alberta independence petition signatures.
Yeah, and we're actually going to click into the article here and read most of it just because this is breaking. Nobody's kind of made videos on it or anything like that. We want to get the in-depth meat and potatoes of what kind of happened today. It's kind of a half ruling. So we won half of it. We'll most likely win the other half, but the timeline, I think, is still set for the same referendum question on October 19th of a non-binding referendum.
Oh, so that one's not working. So do you want me to find another one?
What do you
mean?
It's
Western Standard. We're not.
Yeah, no, it does work.
No.
It allowed me to read the article for free earlier.
No.
Oh. Yeah, because I read the whole article earlier.
Okay.
Okay.
So what do you want me to do? Next story?
And how did you click into the article?
I just clicked on the link. This link.
Yeah, well, why don't you try clicking on the actual picture maybe? Oh, there.
No, I clicked on the picture and then it just goes to the picture.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine.
So do you want me to go to the next story or find an article?
Yeah, we'll go to the next story because they're all interrelated, so it's all going over the same information.
Jason Levine says, quote, breaking news, partial court win for Stay Free Alberta. The Alberta Court of Appeal has granted a partial stay, meaning Elections Alberta can now move forward with counting and verifying the signatures submitted for the Stay Free Alberta petition. This is a major step forward for transparency.
And we'll leave it there for a second, and then we'll go over the rest of what Jason Levine says. Sure. Absolutely fantastic. And I will say, There was a lot of work done. So even just getting the signatures counted will be huge for everybody that stood out in the cold. But I think this goes right in line with what the actual court decision will ultimately be. That other half of that decision is going to take some time, though.
True. And says Albertans were told this petition had gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures. Now the official count can finally be verified and reported. To be clear, this does not end the full court case. The petition still cannot yet be certified as successful or formally referred to the Minister of Justice while the appeal continues. But today's decision removes the block on verification, at least. The signatures will now be counted. Albertans deserve to know the numbers. This is a procedural victory, a transparency victory, and a major development for everyone who believes Albertans have the right to be heard.
Yeah, and I will say this, the mainstream media got a lot out of this because there was a lot of misreporting going on. I think they squeezed all the juice they can get out of it, and I don't expect them to really report in depth on this half. If this ruling had gone the other way, it would have been covered nationally over and over and over again to set a narrative for October 19th. This is really good, and I will even say if the second ruling comes in before October 19th, that's going to be another victory for us to kind of sit the plate for October 19th. So people can be reassured there will be a binding referendum in quick succession within 6 to 12 months. Most of the thought leaders within Alberta independence believe the binding referendum will take place October 17th, 2027. And I'll say this, Danielle Smith is already trying to load that October 17th ballot of next year with questions. We need to make sure whether it's Danielle Smith or somebody else running the province, there are no other questions, number one, except the binding referendum question for independence. And number two, if there are any other citizen-led referendums and there are questions, it has to go after the 17th referendum for independence. That way it keeps the clarity question absolutely spot on. So everybody knows there is no questions on the clarity of that binding referendum.
And also being a win for, and as I've said, all the work that the 7,000 plus volunteers did gathering signatures, that is still being appreciated if they counted them or not. But now it also is a recognition for the work of those 7,000 people that at least they can count the damn signatures.
Well, and nothing's going to be easy within Alberta independence. And I think we've learned over this last year that the federal government is really trying to stretch this process out. We're already in a position, if we get the binding referendum next year in October, we're going to have to win the first referendum, the second referendum, and the U.S. presidential election. I mean, we have to hope a Gavin Newsom or somebody else doesn't win there because we need to be recognized if Canada doesn't go into good faith negotiations. So there's three major victories we're going to need on the current timeline. That being said, the current timeline isn't the worst thing as long as we get it by October 2027. That would be substantially shortened compared to the 2.5 to 3.5 years that the federal government and Danielle Smith are currently trying to pitch. We need to make sure after this first non-binding referendum, a ton of pressure again is applied on the UCP and Danielle Smith to make sure there is a commitment for a binding question on October 17th, and there are no other questions on that ballot, and there will be no citizen-led petitions before that ballot, meaning they can have some after but not before, because we don't want confusion on the Clarity Act.
Pressure on the UCP and Danielle Smith, or even maybe someone different that will advocate fully for Alberta independence, and also to again try to and attempt to do anything possible to not have that time stretch out, because again, people, especially younger people, will only wait this much so much time before they decide, well, this is never going to happen anyways again, so I'm just going to leave. And then you lose all those voters.
We're on a good timeline, so I don't think we need to focus on that right now. What we need to focus on is the pressure we're going to apply after we win this October 19th ballot. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to really be focused in on what Jeff Rath really starts to say about this victory we just got in court, because he's the one that pushed that case, tried a lot of that case, and put a lot of that court work together. So I'm going to want to know what he thinks on the timeline and the best strategy going forward, because as time goes along, I'm actually falling in a lot more to the Jeff Rath camp, not as far as infighting and things like that go, but with putting pressure on the UCP so we can get a binding referendum as quick as possible.
Yes, and speaking of Jeff Rath says, quote, stay for Alberta official notice. Alberta Court of Appeals grants stay of Justice Leonard's decision. Elections Alberta must count, verify, and communicate, which they probably really don't want, the signatures as required under the Citizens Initiative Act. you want me to read into it?
No, you can leave it there. And this was a big win for all of Alberta independents, but especially Jeff Rath. He worked really hard on this. Thank you for everything he's done to this point, as well as Mitch Sylvester. This is a day we really need to thank them because they worked so hard on that and they're continuing to push forward. I'm glad they're going to get this credit and those signatures are going to get counted along with every single person that went out and gathered those signatures.
And now to the other heavy hitter lawyer, Keith Wilson says, quote, today's Court of Appeal decision does not change the October 19 referendum question. The court has allowed Elections Alberta to verify the petition signatures, but did not allow the citizen initiative question to proceed to a referendum before the appeal. The October 19 vote remains in place. Albertans will still need to be asked whether Alberta should remain in Canada or begin the legal process toward a binding referendum on independence.
Yeah, and when this decision first came out, I was really confused. I didn't know the implications and things like that. I'm really glad Keith Wilson put a short statement out like this that was very clear on what's going to happen on October 19th. It's still a non-binding referendum. Now, I know Jason Levine, Keith Wilson, a lot of the other big thought leaders that know the legal system kind of inside and out have previously said, even if it was a binding referendum on October 19th, because there's other questions on that ballot, they would have been able to challenge it through the Clarity Act. That's why it's so important. October 2027, if that is when the binding referendum is, we have to make sure right after this referendum, no other questions can be on that ballot, period. Danielle Smith is already trying to flood that particular date with questions. She's got one on there already, and that's already a year away.
And again, because in the bigger scheme, it also can confuse voters and it can obfuscate the actual question being asked.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything about confusing voters, to be honest with you. I think it's specifically so the federal government will be able to challenge it through the Clarity Act. And that's what everybody said about this non-binding referendum as well. The fact that I think she's trying to normalize all these questions on one ballot this year. So when it happens next year, people are just going to accept it. And we need to say, no more questions, just one question. Do we want to remain in Canada or not?
Now, last heavy hitter lawyer, Eva Chipiuk says, quote, a very important decision and an important win for citizens from the Alberta Court of Appeal today. The Court of Appeal granted a partial stay of Justice Leonard's decision.
Okay, and just leave it here. This is going to be rather a long post, but she is one of the big legal minds within Alberta independence. I like everything she put here. So we're going to go through it nice and slow so everybody kind of understands what happened today and some of the implications to that.
The court recognized the irreparable harm that would be caused by the delay. As time passes, verification becomes more difficult. Public confidence in the integrity of the petition process can erode, and delaying verification causes harm to the applicant that cannot later be remedied or compensated with money. The court found this harm was distinct from any delay in advancing the referendum itself and could not be cured after the fact. Today's decision is also important because it helps clear the record. There have been There has been significant public confusion, arising from the court challenges and the various resulting decisions. In my view, the litigation itself and the way much of the legacy media chose to report on it created far more confusion and division than the citizen initiative petition ever did by itself. One aspect of the Alberta Court of Appeal's decision deserves particular attention. The court clarified that the constitutionality of portions of the Citizen Initiative Act has never been decided. In other words, the respondents' In other words, the respondent's constitutional challenge remains unresolved because the Chamber's judge did not rule on that issue. The Court of Appeal expressly recognized that it remains outstanding and will have to be determined another day.
Okay, so leave it there just for 1 second. Basically, they're going to allow us to count the signatures and certify those signatures, which are very important and which will go into the second half of this case. So I think we have really strong legal grounds leading into the second half of this case. But even if that second half of that case is lost, we have multiple options now. We have multiple bullets in the barrel, whether it's having the premier call the actual binding referendum question, or if this is cleared up in court and we're going to have a citizen-led petition. Now, I do have a lot of questions because we have two shots at this thing potentially. Do we want to put one forth first in case the federal government blocks that and then come in quick succession with the citizen-led initiative? Or what is the best strategy going forward for the binding referendum in 2027?
And it continues. Importantly, the constitutional question was not decided against the appellant. It remains an open legal issue for another proceeding. That distinction matters. For months, many people were left with the impression that the courts had already determined the constitutionality of the legislation or the petition. They had not. Lawyers and the legacy media have an important responsibility to help the public understand what the courts have actually decided and what they have not, rather than
Well, and she's right there. Lawyers and the mainstream media. Now, there are a lot of lawyers within Alberta Independence, which is absolutely fantastic to get that messaging out there. That's why we brought up Jason Levine. That's why we brought up Keith Wilson, Jeff Rath, Eva Chipiuk here. These are some of really not only the thought leaders in Alberta Independence, but great legal minds. So they're doing a great job clarifying that. Will the mainstream media actually step up? And even if the mainstream media doesn't want to clear this up, they should be inviting some of these people on their shows, whether it's Jeff Rath or Keith Wilson. They've already built relationships with them. So I really hope to see those faces on CBC, Global News, and stuff like that. Even though I don't like the mainstream media in Canada because I think it's extremely biased, we do need to get the messaging out there through those streams.
Just to finish, lawyers and the legacy media have an important responsibility to help the public understand what the courts have actually decided and what they have not. Rather than feeding confusion or sensationalizing ongoing litigation, they should strive to provide clear, accurate, and balanced information. An informed public is essential to maintaining confidence in both our justice system and our democracy. Hopefully, going forward, we can all do better by informing the public with accuracy rather than adding to confusion.
Yeah, fair and balanced coverage. That's something we can hope for in a free and independent Alberta. As far as long as we work in this Canadian structure of mainstream media, I don't think we're going to get that. We're going to be fighting an uphill battle. But Keith Wilson has been on mainstream quite a bit, and he has represented Alberta Independence extremely well as Jeff Rath.
And thank you so much to Todd for the $5 super chat and
you.
the message saying, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Eva, Keith, Mitch, and Jeff, I knew they could do it and knew how hard they must have been working behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've all done a fantastic job. And at different times, different people have given some of those individuals flack for infighting and things like that. What I have always said is we need all these individuals, and people are going to have different opinions and different voices within a grassroots movement. But this is what is keeping the federal government so off balance. They don't know how to address this movement. This is not like Quebec, where there's one attack vector they can go after.
But now let's actually get into the rest of the comments. And again, Todd, your other comments about the incident, we'll reread them when we get to that portion of the show. But for now,
we're going to get to that portion of the show when we get to Alberta Stay Free. And that is the next section directly after these comments. So
yes, but let me actually get to the other ones. Where were we? Silverfeet, hello, says, hi, watching the Germany game. They finally subbed off the DEI players, so they have a chance now. I keep saying I don't even know if Germany has a chance. I am keeping like one eye on the score just to know what happens, just to see if I was right about it.
She's been obsessed with soccer. We've talked about this in the past, but especially today.
They're on penalties
with
now.
That game. Yeah, they're on penalties. I'm trying to tell her you have to turn off the game. She's trying to keep one eye on the game.
Well, it's on my phone where I look at the messages as well. Todd says, it's all good, guys. Read them whenever you see fit. And yes, we will read your messages, Todd, once we get to that section. But Silverfeet is also watching. William Ravel says, howdy, Nat and Guy. It's been a while. I took a week off last week because it was my birthday week. Happy birthday, happy belated birthday in this case, and hope you had a great birthday week as well.
And we are going to start filming some educational content. Tomorrow we film it. Hopefully it's going to be released early next week or later this week. It's all primarily about Alberta Independence, but I'm looking at some other avenues we can do some videos on. So hopefully we can reach out to people that haven't been exposed to Alberta Independence. And then when they look at the channel, maybe they'll watch it live and they'll become exposed, because right now we're having a real tough time getting out of an echo chamber because every video is labeled Alberta Independence. Yes. We need to get people that haven't been exposed to Alberta Independence that live in Alberta for October 19th and hopefully to vote for an independent Alberta.
True.
That was a lot of times I said.
Philip Vespa says, honestly, I'm so glad we got this victory. Now we must have our question on the ballot. Getting sick of the World Cup propaganda from Carney. This is getting me hyped. I'm sick of Carney in general, but it was sad that I was even almost kind of cheering against Canada when they won.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly all the answers yet. This information's just come in. Keith Wilson seems to be pretty sure it's going to be a non-binding referendum question on October 19th. I'm completely fine with that. We just need to focus on that and win that. That being said, I have a feeling Jeff Rath might have a different opinion, so I'm going to be keeping a close eye on him. And even if we can't get a binding referendum question, to start using this court decision to put pressure on Danielle Smith and the UCP, would be an interesting strategy. So start demanding a non-binding, a binding question, even if we can't get it, to make sure they know we have a lot of discontent and we're going to really start honing in on them.
Mike Freedom Honey, hello, and thank you for being here. Mike says, smash that like button and share, #winning. And yes, Todd also says #winning. And Glenn says, well said, Mike. And yeah, for now at least. But let's continue with that mentality. And again, once you get a small win, just compound that and compound that energy also into pushing for further and further and to keep momentum up as well, I think.
Yeah, make sure we keep pushing forward, but make sure now that we learned from the last year, not one single step back. We want that second binding referendum October 17th. At the absolute latest, and there will be no compromises, and there should be consequences for Danielle Smith and other people within the UCP that are going to try to block that or make this a 2.5 to 3.5 year process.
And lastly, Sean B. Hello says Mount Rathmore, like because of the what's it called, thumbnail.
Yeah, I actually had a thumbnail I had made this morning, then the news came in, so I had to make a whole new thumbnail. I thought that was absolutely fantastic because both Jeff Rath, Keith Wilson, and Mitch Sylvester were on there.
But now actually getting to Alberta Stay Free, let's get into the segment to know what's been going on in Edmonton over the weekend.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
Let's start with Keith Wilson saying, quote, Ottawa's offer seems to be this: accept higher carbon costs on Alberta's existing production today, and maybe someday Ottawa will allow a pipeline to the Pacific if BC, First Nations, regulators, and federal politics all line up. That's not certainty, that is leverage being used against Alberta.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think federalization is coming to Canada 100%. I was actually thinking about this a lot today because it seems like Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, they all got the tap on the shoulder and they're playing along with the federal government. The best way, if I was the federal government and assuming that they're playing with inside of a uniparty, would be for Mark Carney to build all the mechanisms and play the bad guy. And then for him to step down and allow way for the Conservatives to come in and actually use those mechanisms for federalization to say we're going to rebuild Canada as a united Canada and start taking sovereignty away from provinces to have the people cheer for it. I don't want to see that happen, and this is why Alberta independence needs to happen now.
Oh, sorry, I didn't read that last part. It says Alberta has outgrown the excuses. Alberta is done waiting, and we have to start behaving that way and stop being so Canadian. I will continue to say that and use that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hashtag, I guess I could make it.
And let's go into the big news, and I think this was the next actually post that we had here today.
Yes, and unfortunately and sadly, Jason Levine says, quote, reported assault near Jasper Avenue and 109th Street in Edmonton. Don Bonner of Alberta Sovereignty Now was reportedly assaulted today near Jasper Avenue and 109th Street in Edmonton. This is from yesterday. According to early reports, Bonner was approached by an unknown individual and attacked near the road. During the incident, he was nearly struck by a vehicle and sustained an injury to his foot. The extent of his injuries are not yet known. Bonner is well known in Alberta Sovereignty circles and is now seen driving his truck displaying Alberta flags, and is often seen, driving his truck displaying Alberta flags and Alberta Sovereignty Now signage. He is an active advocate for Alberta sovereignty and has been visible at events across the province. It is reported that Bonner, spoke with a police officer near the scene, though it is not yet clear whether a formal investigation is underway. It should be. Violence and intimidation has no place in political discourse, no matter where someone stands politically. No one should be assaulted, threatened, or put in danger for peacefully expressing their views. This incident could have ended with serious injury or worse. More details will be shared soon.
Okay, and you picked the longest post to read everything.
Because it had all the information.
That being said, This is completely unacceptable. If this was somebody carrying an LGBTQ flag, hell, if they weren't even carrying an LGBTQ flag, but it was in a crosswalk and somebody ran it over with their tires, there would be federal news coverage of this all over the place. If this was somebody with a Canadian flag, this would have made national news over and over and over again. But because it's somebody with an Alberta flag, they think it's okay to do this. I'm not seeing any national coverage on this. I'm not seeing anybody to come out and condemn this from the other side. Both Mark Carney, Ninchi, Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, I'm expecting statements from all of them to absolutely condemn this. And if they don't, that's a failure on their part.
But let's actually watch the video, which there's also some controversy regarding the video itself, apparently, but I might get into it in a little bit. The bird going.
Yeah, and when I first seen that, I thought his leg got ran over by the car. Luckily, it just barely nicked him. That could have ended absolutely devastatingly. And maybe going forward, not being in the center small lane, so we can stand in a group together. It's going to be a lot harder for one individual to come up to a group. They're going to be a lot more hesitant. We can watch each other's back. I'm glad somebody had it on camera so this incident could get out there, because there's been multiple incidents in the past that haven't got out there because we just didn't have video of it.
Yeah, when people, especially when we were in the signature collection phase, a lot of things were reported, but unfortunately there wasn't enough people to film it or record it.
Well, also because we're going to be going into the summertime and we're sending a lot of people out into Edmonton and Calgary to have discussions and to bring awareness to Alberta independence. Make sure we're going in groups. Make sure we have cameras kind of on everything. So if something like this does happen, we can identify this individual.
But now I actually do want to read Todd's comments, because it seems that Todd was there or across the road from where it happened. Todd says, "Hey guys, I was scary yesterday in Edmonton. I was on the sidewalk across from the Meridian where Donnie was attacked." And this is this individual waving the flag. "Stupid me left my phone in the truck half a block away and had a patsy on a short leash attached to me. Couldn't get, there's quite a few."
Yeah, and well, it looks like there was a group of people there because Todd was there, and I think there was a few other individuals there as well. So it's good that they were there together, but we have to make sure we're literally standing together. This was absolutely ridiculous what happened here.
And continues, "Couldn't get across to help with all the traffic, had to watch helplessly. It sucked, took a while to settle down last night. There were others screaming at him just before that vehicle stopped. One guy put it in park in the light to get out and scream in his face 30 seconds before the video." And says, "Gave the next guy the bright idea, felt comfortable, but took it even further, obviously. Funny thing is, we had as much or more positive waves and honks, ridiculous, and that is good to hear as well." And it says he made the honest mistake of getting himself isolated out there. Doesn't mean he has to physically be attacked. Not his fault at all.
He was doing a lot of things absolutely right as well. He still was on the concrete. He wasn't just standing in the middle of the street, and he had a safety vest on. That safety vest must have come in extremely handy, especially after that first car just barely missed him. He was very visible. So that was a great idea by that individual to at least have that safety vest on. But let's try not to be isolated like that in the future, just to avoid things like this.
And then sometimes you don't even notice that you're going to be in that situation until it actually is happening and you're right in it. But again, if there can be more bigger groups of people going out together, and also because it shows a bigger presence, and it seems like it was the case in this case, but just being, and that guy did look a little bit unhinged, the one that was like trying to get the flag.
He would have to be unhinged to do something like that. The Alberta Independence side hasn't done a single incident like that yet. These things are racking up on the Forever Canada side or on the Federalist side there, I'll say. And I'll say having 4 people in a group would be a great idea if possible. not just two. If we need to take bathroom breaks, things like that, go in pairs. Because I know we've been at protests. I've had to use the bathroom and it's only me and you, and then I absolutely have to leave you sometimes.
Yes.
So,
But now let's go. An unfortunate story, and hopefully we'll learn more about if something is being done, if one of the bigger figures has something to say about it, because again, it clearly was the individual waving the Alberta flag with people there looking at him also waving the Alberta flag that got attacked by somebody that either didn't agree with the message, was unhinged, was on some sort of substance. But again, that is also the fault of the city of Edmonton for not controlling that. And if the police will have a further involvement.
well, you did bring up a good point there in saying if maybe this individual is on substances or there's going to be some mentally unstable people. We are going into the cities. Edmonton and Calgary are going to be our huge focuses this summer. So we need to be prepared for this, and we need to have strategies of going at least in pairs with cameras.
But again, there's also a lot of mental illness amongst the Liberals and the Forever Canadians. So let's just expect the worst and plan for it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And plan
Expect the
for it
worst
as
and plan for it.
But next, Chris Scott from the Whistle Stop says, is this appropriate from a government employee?
Yeah, and again, this is another example of this coming from the Federalist side, and it's coming nonstop. If this is a federal employee, and I don't know if it's verified yet, Chris Scott seems to think it is. If it is, they absolutely need to be fired 100%, and a public example needs to be set of them. A public example needs to be set of the guy that I would say almost tried to kill the guy with the Alberta flag in the video that we just watched as well. There needs to be no more of this. They need to put it into this now, make an example out of these individuals. So as we go into the summer, this thing can go on as peaceful as possible.
But it says, Let's Talk Alberta message received a new message, and the message says, come here and try it. I will personally come end your life,
I will
essentially.
personally come split your throat.
Thank
you say it like that.
Split your throat and let cloud water the northern soil that is my home. Yeah, that's how I had to read it because, again, YouTube does get angry about it. But
And then you can see it on the screen. We had to alter some of the words just because of YouTube censorship.
but a very clear threat, essentially.
But that's normal stuff that I kind of expect to see, especially because we work online as well, where you're going to get emails like that sometime. But when it's a government employee, absolutely not acceptable.
Or coming from a government source of one of these, groups.
Well, and in Canada as well, that's far beyond just free speech. That's an actual threat that should be followed up on by the police.
But
I mean, because if it was the opposite way around, they would definitely be arresting people right now.
Mm-hmm. But next, Keith Wilson says, quote, a prime minister who responds to Alberta's lawful democratic aspirations with warnings and scare tactics is not defending democracy. He is revealing Ottawa's attitude toward Alberta. Pay, obey, and do not ask difficult questions. That is precisely why Albertans need a vote and independence. And it's because the Globe and Mail says Alberta referendum is, quote, dangerous bluffs, as Carney says, ahead of Stampede appearance. And yes, he is coming.
This isn't a bluff. This is democracy. And that's what they don't seem to understand. He's trying to run fear tactic campaigns because it worked with his election with Donald Trump. And so this is the exact same game plan he's going to try to run with Alberta independence. And it's a shame because it seems like he's tapped every single conservative on the shoulder and they're all right along with Mark Carney now. It's like they're all one big liberal party almost when it comes to this specific issue, at least.
But as that last little bit said, Whiplash says, quote, Canadian Prime Minister Carney looks panicked after Trump ended all trade negotiations last night after the Reagan Foundation announcement. He is desperately trying to find another country in Asia that will replace what America has been for Canada.
Yeah, and he can look and look and look all around the world. The U.S. is almost 80% of our trade. Asia altogether, I mean, the biggest second trading partner is China, and that's 5%. There's no way you're going to replace the United States. Even a bad deal with the United States is better than any deal you're going to get with anybody else. He hasn't been coming to the table. He must be absolutely panicked by this point. And this is big news for Alberta independence because this is the issue. I think a lot will hinge on a lot of voters, and it's nothing to do with Alberta. It actually has everything to do with Mark Carney's tactics and when it comes to trade negotiations with Donald Trump and not being able to put his differences aside. Mexico has put their differences aside. They have a far left ideologue for a president, and they have been negotiating hard for well over a year now. And it looks like that trade deal is just about to come to a conclusion.
Now, what we can control, absolutely, is how we build here at home. that's the focus of Budget 2025, generational investment here in Canada. And what we can also control, or at least heavily influence, is developing new partnerships and opportunities, including with the economic giants of Asia, which is the focus of this trip. Now, what we
Absolutely crazy. He just gives the same line, the same speech, and the Liberals just absolutely eat it up. His poll numbers keep going up, up, up. And why is that? Like, why is that? Do I think it's fake polling? I don't necessarily think it's fake polling. I think hundreds of thousands of Conservatives are leaving every year. We've left. We've talked to a ton of people that have left. When you look at the statistics, it says 241,000 people left last year. It's got to be even more people this year with a majority Mark Carney government. He's really going to start turning up the heat. Conservatives are really going to start looking to the United States and Mexico as a safe haven. And as that happens, it becomes almost impossible for the Conservatives to win a national election because they've lost that critical mass of individuals. In Alberta, we still have that. That's why Alberta independence is not only a dream, but it could be a reality very, very soon.
But also I say, let's help others see the real, actual, obvious, evident managed decline that Mark Carney is trying to get Canada further into. Canada's already in a managed decline, but we already saw what he did when he was over in the UK with Brexit and how everything led to where they are now, which is not a very good place. And again, continuing with down the same line that just fails countries.
Well, what he also says is we need to diversify into Asian markets. The reason he's so focused on those Asian markets is not just China. He has a ton of MOUs from Asian countries that are some of the biggest manufacturing businesses in Canada. But all those MOUs are absolutely hinged on the USMCA being renewed. If they're not, those MOUs are not going to be followed through. We've already had Japan with Toyota and a bunch of other car companies come out and say they're not going to follow through on that MOU unless the USMCA is renewed. They're trying to avoid American tariffs and they're trying to do it through Canada. But if Mark Carney can't even avoid those tariffs, how is he going to get all those MOUs to actually commit? He's not.
But now let's get back into your comments before we head into Alberta politics.
Yeah.
Todd says, yeah, that guy is calling me on across the street right before then sees I can't get out there to help. And also says, Donnie telling me to call the cops and I have no phone on me. And that's, again, a sad, unfortunate situation because you, as we were saying, you were there and you were trying to help. But hopefully, again, and luckily it didn't escalate further, but we don't know in one of those, like, if something similar does happen or they try to do it again, if it can escalate even further, unfortunately.
It's only going to get much worse. We used to do a lot of protests and we used to volunteer with Billboard Chris as well. Billboard Chris used to be targeted by Antifa quite a lot. He had his arm broken in Montreal. You were spit on and chased with him by Antifa in downtown Vancouver. As this thing ramps up into the summertime and as it goes into October 19th, I'm expecting to see maybe a presence come from outside of the province of Alberta. There's a lot of Antifa in British Columbia as well as Montreal. They may start making their way towards Alberta to make a real presence, especially as there's more and more media exposure on this actual event. So I would say, as bad as this thing was, it could get a lot worse and we need to prepare and always go out in groups of 2 to 4.
And also what Antifa loves to do is annoy and bait. So they bait people until you kind of respond back and then they go twice or try to go twice as heavy or twice as hard against you and then blame you for the damage you caused.
Yeah,
Also
we need to start reporting when people start showing up in masks and things like that because that individual wasn't in a mask. So it should be hopefully easy to identify them. But later on in the summertime, people may start showing up in masks.
Mm-hmm. And Rage Against the Machine, hello, says the founding fathers of Alberta independence. Nice on the cover. Ron Barnhill, hello, says 40 likes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Beulah Hillier says, John Bolton condemned this incident on his podcast this morning. So sad what's happening in Alberta. And again, fully condemn it too as well. And it could even be seen as attempted ending of a life.
I wanted to actually take a minute and talk about that John Bolton video he made. It was absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend going to watch it if you haven't seen it. He actually broke down in tears in one part of the video. It was a very emotional video and everything he said and the way to take action now was actually spot on. I absolutely love John Bolton and I know he has got a big telethon coming up we're going to be a part of. So I also can't wait for that.
Hopefully. And I would also say we do have to continue to condemn each time it happens, but also highlight it and put it back into their faces. Like, hey, it's your side that's doing this, not us. these incidents are mostly, if not in all of them, coming from your part. And because you don't know how to have an actual debate, and the only thing you know how to do is react like this. And Rage Against the Machine says, exactly, never go out alone, better in small groups.
Yeah. And thank you for everybody that did give us a like today. Usually if we can hit 100 likes, I notice the next day the algorithm really pushes us out to double the audience. So hopefully we can expand into a bigger audience for October 19th.
Sean B says, for Canada people are unhinged. We need to go out in groups and video everything.
Yeah, we need to video everything. And there was video of this incident, but we need to have... This is why having groups of 2 is important. So the one person kind of holds the camera and can get a close identification on the individual's face. It may be hard to identify this individual in this particular case.
Todd says, yeah, like I was, what am I to do? Have to have a fist fight in the middle of the street? No, thanks.
Yeah, we used to go out to protest. So I will say this, there's different kind of little action cameras you can buy. So if you don't have an action camera, a cell phone camera is great, but there's also 360 cameras that you can just put on your shoulder and it's going to get a 360 degree view. So I noticed a lot of time people, when we worked with Billboard Chris, people would attack him from the back, and that's why he always had a 360 camera.
Philip Vespa, and I really agree with this point, says Danielle and Pierre's silence on the Edmonton incident says a lot about their character. I will not let any Federalist Conservative gaslight this Ontarian into supporting a united Canada. And it is speaking very loudly the silence of a lot of people and figures in positions of power currently, and that want to shackle Alberta still down to Canada.
Well, I will say this incident just happened. I'm fully expecting these individuals to come out with statements. And I would even say contact Danielle Smith's office and Pierre Poilievre's office and let them know. So we have a mass amount of people letting them know about this incident. So next time they're interviewed, they can't deny that they knew about this incident because we've let them know about it. I fully expect within the next week, they better come out with statements. Otherwise, there is going to be a backlash.
The next few days, I would say. I wouldn't give them a week. Todd says, why do we have to deal with violence in supposed Canada? Because that's what Canada has become. That is the social rot that now exists within Canada as well, that people cannot have a disagreement without taking it one side. Of people cannot have a disagreement without taking it to actual violence because they think words are violence, so they respond with actual violence in kind.
Yeah.
And that's a problem that the government itself and society itself has allowed for this to propagate and for this to become a truth, a reality that people have to live with.
Yeah, I watch a lot of American politics as well. And the way that American Democrats like to foment violence is the politicians won't say anything about it. They'll let the independent commentators kind of justify it in different ways. So they'll have more people copycat a lot of these different kind of incidents. I don't know if the Federalist independent media is big enough or smart enough to actually do something like that. I really hope not, because this is all about democracy, and all we want is a vote. We're already having to win a non-binding referendum to a binding referendum. Plus, it looks like we have to hope for the right result in the U.S. national election. Every single advantage is on the Federalist side, yet they're still having to turn to violence at this point.
True. And Pete says, it's assault and there's a clear image of his face. Charges better be imminent.
Yeah, and that's what kind of everybody's hoping.
Yeah.
But I mean, we might see the police or say we can't identify the individual. That's why if anybody has information on him, his name needs to be put out online. So people from Alberta Independence can say, we've already identified him. We know who he is. You need to take action on this to the police. And
again, even, I mean, it might be different circumstances, but in Vancouver, which is British Columbia, and Montreal, in both occasions when Billboard Chris, for example, got assaulted, essentially, they did come out to say, oh, we can't find the tapes. We can't actually find more information on him. So there's no way for us to do much else about it. And it was incredibly frustrating for Chris and everybody that supported him. Last two, Todd says, I think there was CTV cameras that caught it. Not sure how it was leaked so quickly. Hopefully the Edmonton police demanded the footage. Well, it did seem like it was somebody from their apartment who had birds in the background filming the incident from the balcony. And then I think that's how it got out. I don't know how or who got the video initially.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed like that was an individual. And Pete, thank you so much for the $2 super
Thank
chat
you.
saying, please stay safe out there. Or please be safe out there. And again, fully condone that message. Yes, be safe out there, please.
Yeah, absolutely. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, I used to work at a bar on Granville Street in Vancouver. And sometimes you would have incidents happen at another bar and the police would come back by, I would say, every 2 weeks, it would be common for them to come by my bar and ask for all the videotapes because they were trying to track somebody from business to business. So if they, for some reason, say they don't have good enough footage, they need to be pulling all the security footage from all the local businesses. If there was a Subway or some other business in the area, that individual may have stopped in there, or a convenience store, something like that. The police know how to do their detective work when they want to find the individual. But subsequently, a lot of times they don't want to find the individual, so they don't gather all the footage from the local businesses. This is a major incident. This isn't just some small incident, because if this isn't addressed now, it's going to grow and foment.
Again, that person was thrown onto a highway with
was hit
probably
by
a
a
highway
car.
or a road at least, and could have been further hit because he was apparently was grazed by a car. Holden, that's how I'm going to call you. Holden says if it was a pride flag, it would be 24/7 coverage and the guy would be in jail by now. Well, in jail by the time it happened, actually.
Well, I said the same thing, and John Bolton said that on his morning video, but it doesn't even have to be a pride flag. Literally, if a crosswalk is painted in a rainbow and you do tire marks on it, that's considered assault against the LGBTQ community. This is a whole nother level. This is actual physical assault against not just one individual, but all Alberta independents here.
Essentially. And thank you so much for the $10 Rumble Rants
thank
to Stephen Jensen saying making a music video to honor Chris Scott on Alberta Day. I need iconic pictures from 2020 to present day, label with where and when, sent to realstevenjensen@gmail.com. Thanks for any help. So anybody that has pictures out there for a Chris Scott music video to honor Chris Scott, please send them over to realstevenjensen@gmail.
Absolutely.
Thank you for letting us know about that, and can't wait to see it as well.
Yeah.
But now let's actually go into Alberta politics. And once again, we have to make this disclaimer. It is heavily raining here in Mexico, close to Mexico City. So if the power goes out, we didn't just leave. It's because the power went out.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And I will say, before we go into Alberta politics, I put a few different stories here. I think each one of these stories represent the big issues that are going to really affect Canada and Alberta independence and are going to be defining subjects. That's why I put them in this section, even though a lot of people say they're not directly related to Alberta independence. I think every single story we're about to get into, I think there's 3 of them, are going to have a huge impact on Alberta independence.
And let's start with Teddy says, quote, Jesse Waters asking if Democrats do win the midterms, is Trump getting impeached again? To JD Vance, who says, I'm sure he'll get impeached. Look, they have nothing to actually run on or govern on. Their entire obsessive focus is that they hate Donald Trump.
Yeah, and the reason I put this in here is because of the new timeline for Alberta independence to get that binding referendum. It looks most likely we'll have the non-binding referendum in October 2026 and the binding referendum in October 2027. If we win that, we still have to go into negotiations. This means we're going to have to win the 2028 election and hope a Republican gets in office. Even if I would say a Marco Rubio or somebody like that gets in, they may not recognize Alberta because he comes from a neocon leaning. Somebody like JD Vance would be absolutely fantastic if he does get in. I'm sure he would recognize Alberta independence, but we need to start looking at not only the midterms, because that's going to be an indication for the 2028 election, but we need to start paying attention what's happening in American politics, because the new Alberta timeline is saying we have to win a non-binding referendum, a binding referendum, and the U.S. Federal elections.
If the Democrats do win the midterms, is Trump getting impeached again?
I'm sure he'll get impeached. Look, they have nothing to actually run on or govern on. Their entire obsessive focus of that party is they hate Donald Trump. So if they ever get power, are they going to, lower Americans' taxes? No. Are they going to make your life more affordable? No. Are they going to solve the crime crisis? No. What they're going to do is they're going to spend all their time and all of your money trying to get Donald Trump. I think it's ridiculous. That's what they're running on. But the American people are going to make this determination. I think the American people should vote for the people who want to make their life more affordable, who want to make their neighborhoods safer. That's what we're trying to deliver every single day.
If the
And
Democrats
he's absolutely right there. The Democrats have nothing to run on. That's why communism is having a big come up in the United States right now. We've seen in the New York elections, we're seeing the same thing happen in the Colorado elections as well. The Democratic Party is actually negative $3 million in their coffer. They can't even finance the midterms. The way they're financing it is the $200 million they funneled to George Soros through Joe Biden at the end of his term is now being redistributed into very specific candidates, very left radical candidates like we've seen in New York and Colorado right now. And if they do win these midterms, you better believe they will be coming after Donald Trump. Now, how big of an effect will that have on the 2028 election? I don't know. I think the Republicans are set up very, very well for 2028. Both Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance are strong candidates, especially if they stand together. And the Democrats have nobody. The number one candidate for the 2028 election for the Democrats is Kamala Harris by double-digit lead. That's absolutely ridiculous to me. She says nothing. It's just a word salad. I was shocked when all the scandals came out about Gavin Newsom that he was, number one, wasn't in the lead and that Kamala Harris was so far ahead of him. But this will have a huge effect on Alberta independence no matter which way the 2028 election goes and the midterms.
And again, that election is very important, and the fact that hopefully no Democrat can get in, and it looks like the midterms are going to go a little bit, maybe a bit better than a lot of people, even on the Republican side, were expecting, and on the MAGA side or in the America First side. It's been a while since we didn't talk about U.S. politics, but I will say it is convenient and it is important for Alberta to hope for a Republican candidate to stay in, be it J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, because that not only comes with support from the U.S. because it would be a stronger trade partner to have Alberta by itself than having to deal with Canada as a whole, but also because their national security strategy, which they came out with in November, will probably be continued by a J.D. Vance or a Marco Rubio, probably not by a Democrat. But again, having not just the U.S., but the whole shield of the Americas down south to the rest of the continent with all those countries that have now joined is incredibly important as well for recognition of an independent Alberta.
There's one more thing to consider here, and that is the midterms. We want a strong showing in the midterms so they can't impeach Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to take a hard line on Mark Carney and the USMCA. Now, if they manage to impeach him or if they get him drawn into an impeachment, that might be a large distraction and he might not be able to really focus in on what needs to be done with Canada in order to try to reform the country or push them in the right direction. And if they manage to actually have a successful impeachment on him, whether it's Iran or something else, God knows how they're going to try to do it. I'm sure they have a strategy already mapped out. But if a J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio gets in there, they may have a different strategy when it comes to Canada and the USMCA. I really want to see Donald Trump be the one to put the screws onto Mark Carney, and that looks like what's going to happen for the next 2 years as long as he can stay in power.
But next point that you brought up, Wealthmood says, quote, integration is the key, quote unquote. Then why did Canada bring in people at a pace that even governments admitted outstripped housing, healthcare infrastructure, and settlement capacity? The principle wasn't the problem, the execution was.
And again, I put this in Alberta Politics because this is going to be one of the big issues is going to be immigration.
It already is.
When it's polled, it's the number one issue in Alberta as well as Quebec and many other provinces that don't even have independence movements. This is polled as one of the big issues. We need to focus on this. They want to focus on integration. I want to focus on remigration. I think Donald Trump is putting out a great strategy for the U.S. Other countries should be replicating that strategy within the EU. I know there is a lot of talk within the EU right now about remigration. Some countries are already implementing remigration strategies through financial benefits.
And again, funnily enough, a lot of the countries in the Shield of the Americas that are also dealing with an outsize of illegal migration, in this case, are starting to do remigration themselves too.
The key on immigration is the capacity to integrate people into your society. And now the first generation of immigrants that come is always going to find it difficult because they're leaving the world, the country, the language, the culture that they left. And there's always going to be a little bit of, sometimes a lot of adjustment to a new society that they've come to for prosperity, for more freedom, for whatever.
Well, you can also set rules for them to actually start having to do that instead of hoping and wishing they
They
will
do set
one day.
rules, but it's not about rules. There is no national identity. They're trying to erase the history. They're telling them to keep their initial culture and not adopt any new culture because there is no overarching Canadian identity. They're trying to erase the fundamental principles. They're trying to erase Christianity. They're trying to erase a lot of things in Canada right now. They want a homogenized identity where anybody can come into the country and just keep their original culture. And that's causing a lot of problems and frictions amongst groups within Canada.
Well, this retard is the one that said that there was a post-national, Canada was post-national and now multicultural, and that was the cultural identity of Canada. So,
And doing what we can to support those people as they arrive and get them the opportunity to work, to contribute, to build a life for themselves is really important. But for me, the biggest measure of success on immigration is what we do for the second generation.
And what he says there is we need to integrate them and get them jobs. And if we look specifically at the UK has the worst statistics on this. But for every one job that is given to an actual citizen, 27 jobs are given to migrants. This is absolutely ridiculous. Citizens need to come first. And I hope in a free and independent Alberta, Albertans will put their citizens first.
Our second generation immigrant kids born in the country, raised to feel like they are part of a country, like they can be just as much a Canadian as someone whose parents were born there.
but they don't even know what a Canadian is. They're not taught it in school. They're not taught it by their parents. They're not taught it by their friends. They're just told, oh, you can do and be whatever you want, and just we're post-national, we're multicultural, so there is nothing you can guide yourself on as to what a Canadian is.
Well, the U.S. we can leave it there. The U.S. was going down that same path, but with Donald Trump, he's really trying to reinstall that national sense of identity. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a good thing because most Western English-speaking countries are currently trying to erase that identity. But you're seeing the right wing come up in Europe saying, what is our identity? They're asking these questions now, and each country is asking these questions on an individual basis.
Because again, if you can have a very fractured population, and if you can have a group of people who do not all identify with one thing or can look at one thing as something to be proud of or to fight for or to want to defend, well, then it's easier as an overarching government that more and more wants people to depend on them and forces people to depend upon them as a government. Well, it's easier to continue to manipulate them and to have them under your control if they have nothing else to fight for, nothing to look towards, and nothing to unify them. So it is very purposeful, the breaking down of actual national identity.
It can go very purposeful in both ways, and I will have a tinge of caution here because there is all this fervor about what identity is in all these different cultures. It's a good thing. I think countries should have identities, but we often seen the right wing in the past go towards fomenting a very strong identity in order to push people into a war or to a draft. I don't want to see that. I want to see a strong national identity and strong first principles without having to go to war and things like that.
Or being used on the other side by the national socialism that Mark Carney might want to do by saying, oh, we're Canadian, elbows up, and we're going to go elbows up against the US and Trump and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it can go either way. But lastly, Jasmine Lane says, quote, oh, CBC, never a dull moment. Sometimes I wonder how much more prosperous our nation could be if we had people who held our own government to account as much as they do the foreign one.
Yeah, and they bring Mexico up here, and we actually fled Canada. We now live in Mexico. They're saying that Mexico didn't have to jump through any hoops. The fact of the matter is Mexico had to jump through the most hoops of any country. They're continually having to jump through hoops. And a lot of the mechanisms that the United States is trying to build into this trade deal will make Mexico in the future continue to have to jump through those hoops. Mexico was a major threat because of organized crime within the country. So the bar that Mexico had to reach for a good trade deal is extremely high, higher than any other country. Mark Carney wouldn't have had to reach the same bar because there wasn't the same issues within Canada as there was within Mexico. They built an entire wall on the border of Mexico, and that was the start of the trade talks.
Well, and Mexico was essentially not jumping through hoops, but it is now stuck to the hoop, having to listen to the U.S. if they want to continue with the good trading relationship that they now have achieved.
Well, they know that their economic future relies on that, and they're willing to reach that bar no matter how high that bar is.
There seems to be just a will to destabilize Canadian economy, then the chaos starts to make sense. Then the having to jump into hoops just to get to the negotiating table the way that Mexico doesn't have to starts to make sense.
With all due respect to Ms. Nichols here, you should really not be commenting on things that you have not actually researched. Just saying, because listen, this is not hard to find at all. Did everybody just completely forget about the wall that Donald Trump in his first term and continuing in his second built a literal wall blocking Mexico from America? We just all forgot about that. Actually, you can go onto the border security website and there is a map of the wall and which parts of it are under construction and various other details there. Let me just repeat her own words back to her quickly.
And pause it just for a quick second. He's also labeled different political parties within Mexico terrorist organizations, organized crime individuals, part of a terrorist organization as well. I mean, the level he has gone into Mexico to try to reform this country is absolutely massive. For the most part, Mexico has complied. That's why I'm expecting a good trade deal here. Mark Carney wouldn't have had to do any of these things. He had a very low bar in order to succeed at a USMCA. The fact that he's failing at this is an absolute travesty, especially with the amount of natural resources, water resources, and other resources that Canada has that the United States absolutely wants.
Well, Mark Carney had a very low bar and he tripped over it anyways, on purpose. He purposefully didn't step over it and then tripped on it. But I will say with Mexico, there has also been an outsized cooperation in interventions and in military almost operations with both countries, majorly led by the US. So that is also another hoop that they've had to continuously jump through with each operation that passes.
Making Canada go through hoops that Mexico doesn't have to. Okay, so we got the wall. Does anybody else remember how in September of 2025, the Trump administration started conducting military strikes on suspected smuggling boats? No? 200 people no longer here anymore as a result of those operations that were conducted in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific? Just going to throw that out there. They've also expanded their land operations in Mexico. Okay, yeah, sure, yeah, Canada. Gosh, we are just being treated so unfairly by this administration. Let me tell you.
Yeah, complete economic military cooperation, as well as building a lot of mechanisms into Mexico so they can try to reform the country. What they view Mexico as is they're actually moving a lot of manufacturing down to Mexico that the United States doesn't want, more low-grade manufacturing, but they need a safe environment for that manufacturing to be manufactured and transported. They're really trying to reform the country. I'm glad to see the Mexican government, for the most part, is cooperating. I think it's a bright future for Mexico because of the amount of pressure Donald Trump has applied on the country.
And because Mexico, in the end, a little bit at least knows what's good for them.
Yeah.
For now. Stephen Jensen says, been nice but windy at the whistle stop. Just lucky, I guess. And that's good to hear as well. Pete says, Eagle reported at 10 a.m. that the court's decision is that elections to Alberta will count but not verify our signatures. What's with that? Last we heard, and last we were reading just now from Keith Wilson, Eva Chipiuk, and Jeff Rath, they were saying that they will have to count and verify the signatures. So we'll double check on that in a bit. Pete also says, why would elections to Alberta count our petition signatures but not verify them, kicking the can down the road? And we are afraid of that. And that is what we continuously say that we don't want to happen, is more and more excuses to kick the can down the road. And I mean, at least if what the analysis from Keith Wilson, Jeff Rath, and Eva Chipiuk continues to hold, it is that they have to count and verify the signatures because that is what the stay said. Troglodyte says, Trudy is like Chucky, the doll. Yeah. Troglodyte says, my computer is bogging down like a pipeline MOU. And Troglodyte says, meanwhile, on the Falkland, BC, huge substance lab, one arrest, and he ain't singing. Interesting that they made that arrest. You would think that they would want to actually partner with them, given the BC government is all for that, the substances.
Yeah, they're trying to make reforms in Canada, and they're trying to make arrests in Canada as well, so they can look like they're actually doing something. The problem that Canada is going to have is they're not trying to get to the root cause of the issue, and they're not willing to have full cooperation. They're trying to make one arrest and then wave that around like they did something. The problem with that is the United States has already had full military cooperation with Mexico, and they know what that looks like, and they know when somebody is trying to play like they're actually doing something, but not doing it as what the Canadian government is currently doing.
Rage Against Machine says two-tier justice, yes, and also says very rainy here in Alberta too.
Very
and in
rainy
Calgary.
here.
Yeah, here again, it's like clockwork almost here close to Mexico City. It kind of starts at right when we start the show, or like 20 minutes before we start the show, and then it ends about an hour after we're done.
Yeah, it's nice though, because it's not like we used to live in Vancouver for a long time, and the rain just comes and goes, and there's no...
It's like 3 weeks of no ending little rain. Like it never stops, but it never fully rains.
Yeah, no,
it's
there's
just
full
wet.
rain there.
Yeah, but mostly it's just, you're just wet. Everything's just wet. But here in Mexico, it pours down for like 2 hours and then it goes away, and it's sunny during the morning and during the evening. So way better, I would say. Rage Against Machine says Newsom, yeah. And also says, all we need is the USA to acknowledge us as an independent country and we're good to go.
Yeah, that, and again, what I'm saying is because of the new timeline that is being proposed with the binding referendum coming in October 2027, then negotiations, it looks like we're going to have to really hope for the right result within the U.S. federal elections in 2028 as well.
And hold on, where were we? Oh no, I missed it. Sean B says, go back to Katy Perry and shut your mouth, idiot king. Idiot ex-king, I would say. Rage Against Machine says, more tax slaves. Yeah. Essentially what the immigration plan has been.
Yeah.
Miss Altot says, let these migrants move in with Justin and show him what a Canadian can be. I dare him. I dare him to.
Yeah, it's not even more tax slaves. I really think they're looking at it as a new voter bloc that they can indoctrinate and have vote for extremely progressive policies that no normal citizen would vote for.
Mm-hmm. Philip Vespa says that evil man realized he could just buy their votes if he gave them freebies like guaranteed income and supplemental housing.
Yeah, not just freebies, but indoctrinate them through the mainstream media as well. They don't have a good comprehension of English, so it's a lot easier to do it on somebody like that. That being said, a lot of immigrants are waking up within Canada. So when new immigrants come, they're actually warning them as soon as they get there what the actual deal is. So I don't know how long that voter bloc will actually hold out.
And especially within Canada, I would say in the US, maybe the worry is a little bit more justified as it should be. But in Canada, for understandable reasons, most immigrants are scared of their status being taken away or of not saying the correct thing or of the government looking over them a bit more, which in Canada, again, it basically doesn't make sense at all. But that also keeps them way more compliant than it would a citizen, for example.
With different speech laws and censorship laws coming into Canada, it's going to be real easy to let immigrants know which direction you should be leaning politically and what thoughts are correct and incorrect. And that will have a big influence on voting and things like that.
But now let's go to Alberta Personalities.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done, we're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Let's start with, also from Teddy, says, quote, Jordan Peterson to Piers Morgan saying, I don't know if guys in the UK understand how sad it is for us in Canada and in the United States to watch what you're doing to yourselves. And I'm guessing this is from a while ago.
This is a bit of an older clip. I didn't put it in here for what he's saying about the UK. I actually put it in here because I've left Canada already. I already voted for my independence. We went from Vancouver. We now live in Mexico. But people that have already left Canada, this is how they see Canada now. It's absolutely ridiculous. Canada has become the UK.
I don't know if you guys in the UK understand how sad it is for us in Canada and in the United States to watch what you're doing to yourself. I mean, the UK is a great country. When I go there, I go to Oxford, I go to Cambridge, to these remarkable places in London, see your unbelievable deep history, understand how much the world owes the UK in terms of, say, the establishment of common law and decent government everywhere, including places like India. We owe the UK such an immense debt. And to watch you guys like spiral yourselves into the ground for this idiot, weak political correctness that's gone so far that you can allow your working class women to be raped en masse sadistically and say nothing about it and gaslight people who are telling the truth. It's so sickening. It's so demoralizing. It's almost unspeakable. We all pray, hope and pray here in Canada and the US that you get your act together and grow some spine again.
And I don't think anybody's hoping and praying for Canada anymore. I think we understand what the game is, and it's Mark Carney wants to take Canada towards communism. What people are praying for, the people that have already left Canada and fled that hellhole, is for Alberta and for Alberta independence and to really save Western values, not only in Alberta, but hopefully Saskatchewan as well.
Brian Gertison says, quote, at the end of this clip, Hunter Biden is basically admitting on CTV that he wants to rig the election system in the U.S. so someone they don't like can't ever be voted in again. It's insulting that CTV put this guy on one of their programs thinking we should care what he has to say.
This is not only a Hunter Biden. This is everybody within the Democratic Party. I watch a lot of U.S. media and I keep an eye on what they're kind of saying. I want to know who the candidates are, what's happening in the midterms, what direction they're going. But they're all saying, we're going to make sure this never happens again. And when they say that, if you watch other thought leaders within the Democratic Party, the idea is to give Puerto Rico statehood, to give other regions statehood as well, so they can make sure somebody like Donald Trump and the Republicans will never win again. They also want to pack the Supreme Court. So packing the Supreme Court and giving Puerto Rico statehood are the big two mechanisms I think they want to use if they can obtain power again.
Because they value democracy so much.
That really leads me to what I also wanted to ask you in the Canadian context, because there's a bit of a, I'm not sure if a debate is the right word, but definitely a conversation that goes on in this country about whether what's occurred is kind of a permanent change to the relationship between Canada and the United States. And I wondered if you have a sense of whether that is the case.
Well, to tell you the truth, actually, that I think that's up to you. I think that's up to Canadians. And what I mean by that is this, is that I think that Donald Trump has done more long-term damage to the status of our relationship than, and not only the relationship with Canada, but the relationship with all of our allies than people fully realize. And so at the end of the day, I hope that we elect someone that can heal and mend that relationship. But I think it's going to take time, and I can understand why it was going to take time. When my dad was president of the United States, one of the things that he always say was leaders would come up to him and say, thank you, but how long is this going to last? And I think that next time we have to make systemic changes in our system that are going to prove that this can't happen again.
Let's actually think why they were saying thank you to Joe Biden, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't because he was restoring whatever he says he was restoring, but because he was helping.
They weren't saying thank you. And here's the thing. I didn't put the clip of Joe Biden in there. Joe Biden recently gave a speech and he actually got booed off of stage. Somebody yelled, "Why are you still giving speeches, Biden?" And then everybody started jeering and booing him. And then eventually either it was the end of a speech or he just kind of slumpered off of stage. It's not what you want to see from a former U.S. president. With that being said, he did not represent the U.S. when he was in power there.
Well, was he? That continues to be my question. How much actually in power was he?
Well,
How conscious was he of what he was doing?
Well, I said the midterms would have a big impact on the state of Alberta independence going forward. And so with the 2028 elections, I look a lot into election financing. And the only money the Democrats have right now is about $250 million from George Soros that Joe Biden funneled him before he left office. George Soros has funneled $100 million of that into candidates for the midterms already. I'm expecting the other $150 million to also be funneled into the midterms. Their strategy here is they have no donors right now. The Democratic Party is negative $3 million. Donald Trump has already raised over $150 million. Plus, he has Elon Musk that has donated over another $100 million into Republican candidates. The Democratic Party's only strategy is to funnel all the $250 million into the midterms so they can pull off a slight victory and impeach Trump. Because if they can impeach Trump, they can activate a donor class again, and then they'll use that money for the 2028 election. That's why it's so important. If the Republicans can beat them in the midterms, they will have blown their wad. They will have no money left for the 2028 election. They're putting it all into the midterms right now.
But now let's go back into your comments and then into Alberta's Canada. I almost forgot there. Pete says, Jasmine Lane is a great conservative, but she's 100% Federalist. I watch her because she's pretty darn on the point.
There's a lot of really good independent media that are Federalist. I'm very interested to see Northern Perspective. They're supposed to come to Alberta. They've always been Federalists. If any independent media source was going to be tapped on the shoulder to say go against Alberta independence. Maybe it's them. I really hope they don't, because I watch them on a regular basis. They do good interviews, great investigative journalism as well. I hope they stay neutral on this one, but I have a feeling they're coming out to Alberta not to stay neutral. I'm keeping an eye on what's actually going to happen there.
And Troglodyte says, sing ing. Come on, Nat. Sorry, I'll read it again. Troglodyte says, meanwhile, the Falkland, BC huge substance lab, 1 arrest, and he hates sing ing. Like sing. Troglodyte says, haven't seen JP for a while. Hope he's okay. Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, he's not doing so well. He lost his ability to walk and speak for a while. Since that was the last update, I think about 2 months ago, I haven't seen another update, so I don't think he's doing too well as well.
Miss Toad says, let these migrants move in with just out. Sorry, I had read that one already. And Rage Against Machine says, it's an intentional decline, destabilize the economy. Brookfield comes in and buys everything up. But I would say even further, being able to, again, nationalize or federalize mostly natural resources for the government itself, or whoever's in power.
He's already made it very clear he wants to federalize all of Canada. That means natural resources, but it means a lot of other industries as well. He won't be able to do that if Canada is economically healthy. He'll only be able to federalize if he can economically break the back of Canada and Canadians. And I think that's what Mark Carney's strategy is overall.
Speaking of Canada and Canadians, let's go into Alberta's Canada. And we call it that way because Alberta is the only thing that is still working, functioning within Canada.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
Let's start with this from Mark Nixon. Says,
oh, God, this would have to be the clip of the day.
Quote, Scott Reed says, the Davos speech was the best speech ever delivered in human history. This will be the speech kings and emperors will be discussing 30,000 years from now. Pull up your knee pads and get your lube.
Well, and it's time for action, not words. They're living off of Mark Carney's words and not even the words that he's saying today, because people are starting to turn against him, at least to some degree, especially after what happened with the condos. But they're living off of this one speech. How many times can they cash this check? I guess they're going to keep on cashing it.
And Scott, I'll start with you. What's the political hit of the year?
Davos. I don't even think there's anything that comes close.
And pause it for a second here. The guy in the gray suit or the white suit there is Doug Ford's campaign manager.
This one?
Yeah, the one with the black glasses, just so everybody knows who he is.
And when was the last time that a Canadian leader stood on a stage internationally, delivered a speech that tore its way through every single world capital, but also reach people in every neighborhood across the country? I mean, there has been a period of time since that speech where people will literally bring it up. And I'm not talking about at the Monk Center. I mean, at the corner pub, in a bus station, when you're pumping gas at the petrol can. It has become a rallying cry for all those countries not named United States, Russia, or China.
Yes, because Carney and the Liberals have their hands stuck so far up people's asses that they have to say, oh yeah, that was a great speech, because they've convinced people and Canadians that they are in this precarious situation that Carney's going to save them from.
I don't think so at all. I think they're living in this bubble where they have the fundamental same value principles that Mark Carney has, and so does Europe. And he wants to align all the losers together so they can lose in one great losing circle jerk there. This is going to be absolutely ridiculous if Canada unites with the EU. We see Donald Trump has a strategy for the Western Hemisphere, and it is working. We live in Central America now, in Mexico, as well as
North America.
Okay, we live in Mexico now, but even in Central America and South America, the strategy of the Western Hemisphere having a golden age is absolutely in full effect. The big holdout is Canada at this point.
Yeah, in Mexico a little bit.
Many people don't like it. Many people adore it. Almost everybody has reacted to it. I personally cannot recall a speech that has had such profound effect. And it's because of the speech itself, the man who delivered it, and the moment in which it was delivered. It really caught the moment as we struggle with this crazed world led by the crazed president of the United States. And I just think Davos is, it casts a shadow that we're going to continue to discuss for not just years, decades. I don't know that he gets the prime minister reelected, don't know that earns him a vote, but it certainly earned him respect. And I don't just mean with world leaders. I think it's earned him a lot of respect and has a lot with Canadians and has a lot to do with why he's got that 60% approval rating.
Yeah.
The problem is Mark Carney made that speech and liberals ate it up on a global basis. And that being said, Trump maybe hasn't given the same kind of speech, but he's taken action after action after action, breaking the globalists back, breaking Mark Carney's back, breaking Canada's back. Trump is taking action while Carney is just giving words. One is going to work in the real world, and we're going to see what the outcome of this is. I would rather have the individual that's taking action than the one that's giving platitudes.
Inflection point for the Liberals in public opinion polls, too, kind of solidified a larger lead over the Conservatives for all the months that followed. Corey, what's your hit of the year?
Well, I guess Scott and I spent too much time talking politics because I had Davos down as well. I largely agree with the analysis that Scott had, but if we want to take it maybe a step further from what you mentioned, Vashti, that the lead above the Conservatives by the Liberals is largely based on the differential between how Canadians are feeling about Pierre Poilievre and how people are feeling about Mark Carney, and both have their fans, both have their detractors, but the people kind of in between those two positions started leaning more heavily Carney. If you're looking at what the polling's tracking, and I really do think it's related to how he's being viewed internationally. It's hard to look at it and say it's because of results that have been achieved, on major projects and the rest, but that international riz is not something that Canadian prime ministers normally get.
I'm excited that the word Riz has been employed on the show for the first time, hopefully not the last time. Kathleen,
okay, and you can leave it there.
Disgusted by it, but...
And I think it has a lot less to do that Mark Carney is so popular and more to do with Conservatives are leaving the country and they're leaving en masse. They've been doing it slowly over the last 5-6 years. Now with Mark Carney getting a majority, they're really pulling the parachute on Canada at this point.
Mm-hmm. That too, but I was going to say that isn't it sad for the at least few remaining people that do still want to want to go against Mark Carney, that the thing that's most important to apparently everybody that has been propagandized by the mainstream media is their reputation, and Mark Carney looks to the rest of the world than actual, as even that same guy said, construction or any kind of production that it can be talked about within Canada.
Well, he is doing everything he wants to do. He wants to federalize Canada. He's trying to economically break Canada's back where he can keep his polling numbers up so then he can federalize all of Canada, whether that's natural resources or other sectors there. This is why it's so important. If you want to fight back as a Conservative in Canada, the only way to really do it, where a critical mass of individuals lie, is in Alberta and with Alberta independence.
Mm-hmm. But people are only so patient, I would say.
Yeah, let's keep going here.
But next, Gen Xer says, quote, "This young guy gets it completely. Mark Carney is trying to ram through a $3.2 billion taxpayer-funded bailout for empty condos in Toronto and Vancouver, not to build new affordable homes, not to help young families, to bail out developers, banks, and investors."
And we can go right into the video here.
Hold on.
The Liberal establishment, Mark Carney, and the mainstream political pundits have all been trying to get Canadians to turn a blind eye to the recent $3.2 billion condo bailout. They've been trying to disguise this as an investment in affordable housing. But if they really cared about affordable housing, buying up luxury condos in Vancouver wouldn't be the option. Anyone that's passed Economics 101 understands exactly what happened. Demand was high, which drove up prices, demand then proceeded to decrease, and suppliers that had originally planned for those higher prices were no longer willing to sell at the new market clearing level. In a free market, suppliers would be forced to lower their prices, but instead, Mark Carney, the Liberals, and David Eby have decided to subsidize the condos with your taxpayer money. Now, would you be surprised if I told you that Brookfield Asset Management has investments in Vancouver real estate? To some Liberals, this may come as a surprise, but I presume most of us already knew that this Liberal corruption has been going on way before the condo bailout. This has been the first major scandal of the Carney government to get backlash from the average voter. Will Carney reverse bailing out his buddies or stick to his guns?
Yeah, and I don't think he's going to reverse course on this because all the big players are involved in this one. Chinese investors, the Chinese government, as well as Brookfield Asset Management and all his buddies from there, as well as a lot of his real estate development connections as well. I think he was exposed on this one. I think he's getting a lot of backlash, not only from Conservatives, but this is the first time Liberals have really turned on him. Trying to bail out condo developers is not what they want to see. That being said, I don't really think he's going to try to backtrack on this one. I think he's going to try to pivot and resell it as something it's not.
But again, it is also funny that the one thing that a lot of the Liberals were screaming about was housing. And yet after the promises, the lofty promises that were made about how much housing they were going to build, and with the Minister of Housing, Scott Robertson, or they used to be the mayor of Vancouver, and now it's completely gone the opposite route, and to help the rich condo developers that they all say to hate.
Well, not just rich condo. It's not even rich condo developers, because these aren't individual condo developers. These are multinational conglomerates that he's bailing out. And you better believe there's backroom deals going on here, especially when I looked through this. In order to qualify for this, it's very, very narrow. It's a very small subset of developers that are going to qualify for this, and it's mainly multinational conglomerates.
Oh, sorry. And I would say a lot of them maybe even Chinese or with ties to a certain party over there.
Well, because it's in Vancouver, obviously.
Yes. Sheldon Yakuchuk says, quote, Mark Carney is coming to the Stampede with a message, Brexit. And he either hasn't looked at a true comparison or he doesn't believe that you will, so we ran the numbers.
Mark Carney has been making an argument about Alberta separation. He has been making it in press conferences for weeks now. He is bringing it to Stampede next week. Brexit. What he is not doing is trying to make a case for Alberta to remain. Good day, Canada. However, Uplay here. You've heard the news, you've read the headlines, and now it's time to see the big picture. On this special Sunday edition of The Big Picture, we are holding the Brexit argument up to the light. But first, let's start off with what Mark Carney is not doing. He is not coming to the world's greatest outdoor show on Earth as a source of pride. He is not bringing a message of national unity. He is not coming to thank Alberta for being the largest net contributor to equalization in Canada. He is not coming to Calgary to clear a pathway for our provincial resources. His briefcase will not hold a major project for the province. He is bringing Brexit as a cautionary tale. And his resume. Mark Carney has a bachelor's degree in economics from Harvard University. He has a master's degree and a doctorate in economics from Oxford.
And pause it there. I want to play more of this. This is a fantastic little segment that he made here. But he's going to try to build fear on Brexit. Brexit was not a bad thing. The bad thing about Brexit was you went from one globalist government to another globalist government. What Alberta Independence is trying to do is press the reset button and have a whole new type of government, not the Westminster system anymore. We want to get rid of the corruption. We want to learn from our past mistakes. Brexit did not learn from the past mistakes. And a lot of the people that remained in power are trying to push them back to the EU and destroy the system so people will accept entrance back into the EU. I really hope what happens off of Brexit is Ireland starts their own independence movement as well. And we see that starting to rise. We talked about it on Saturday's show.
He governed the Bank of Canada. He governed the Bank of England. He spent 6 years as a senior economic advisor to the Trudeau government. He has been Prime Minister of Canada for just over a year. And his case, his actual argument, the one he is making to 5 million Albertans about why they should stay inside a federation that takes $23 billion a year from them and blocks their resources in return, is Brexit. That is the argument. From the Harvard and Oxford Economist. Look at the UK. They voted to leave. It was hard. It was messy. See that? That's scary. That could be you. So let's look at it. Let's actually look at it. The United Kingdom is not in a recession. Canada is. Canada is the only G7 nation in a recession. UK unemployment is 4.9%. Canada sits at 6.6%. The United Kingdom ranks 22nd in the world for quality of life. Canada ranks 24th. UK Purchasing Power Index 126.6. Canada 123.5. Now the food banks. Because this one needs to land, the UK sees roughly 250,000 food bank visits per month across a population of 70 million people. That is 0.36% of their population every month. Canada sees 2.2 million food bank visits per month. 40 million people. That is 5.5% of the population.
You can leave it there. And I wouldn't say Britain's doing good because they're not. They're doing absolutely horrible. But I would say I would rather be Britain than any country within the EU right now, because at least Britain has some level of sovereignty if the people can just take back the government itself. But it's that same system, that Westminster system, that it's going to be almost impossible to do within Britain. That's why I hope Ireland can maybe foment some more independence spirit, just like Alberta is right now.
Yes. But now let's go back into the comments and then into Alberta and the world. Chris Calgary, hello, says that CBC shills are a national disgrace. Scott's son works for Carney, conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And Chris Calgary also says, these people are so removed from the average Canadian, clueless, liberal ass kissers.
And I don't know if they are. I mean, Canadians are just so indoctrinated. I would say Albertans are built from a different cloth, and so are Saskatchewans. They're a lot more awake, and that's why independence actually has a chance there. I think they're really talking to an echo chamber. I think a lot of Canadians actually think like that. I've given hope up on Canada. That's why I'm so committed to Alberta, because there is a critical mass of individuals that have their eyes opened.
Mm-hmm. And Chris Calgary also says it's shocking that Canadians don't demand accountability from the government. But again, because they don't need it, because they've been so propagandized that they think that everything that they've been doing is great. So they don't want accountability because everything is great. It's perfect.
Well, no, also the system is too big the way it's designed in Canada, especially when it's been flipped on its head after the jibby jab era, where the federal government holds all the power rather than the local government and the provincial government, how it's actually supposed to work. People don't think their vote actually matters. They don't think they can actually make a change in a system as big and inefficient as Canada has. That's why we need smaller government. That's why Alberta Independence hopes to set all of that right.
Roger Arsenault says, Scott Reed's son works for Carney. Great.
They're all working together,
Yes.
and Poilievre's got a lot of money in his bank account lately.
Philip Vespa also says, he did not just use Gen Alpha language. My brain is fully rotted. It was disgusting to watch him try to do that. But again, I mean, that's the kind of media that Canada has.
Yeah.
And Rage Against Machine says, it's China. Yeah, the condo developer stuff. Yeah. And Philip Vespa says, Britain is doing bad because of their horrible policies. Isn't it astonishing that leaving a trading bloc like the EU instantly wipes off a percentage point from unemployment? You can't hate globalists enough.
Yeah, and I would say even as bad as Britain's doing, and they are doing absolutely horrible, I talk about them on a regular basis, at least they have some level of sovereignty. Well, the EU has signed over their immigration sovereignty. I think it was on the 8th of this month. The EU was supposed to be an economic cooperation bloc. That's not what it is. It's trying to take the sovereignty away on issue after issue after issue. The people of the EU never wanted mass immigration. It was never put it to a vote. They've voiced their opinion that they don't want it. So what does the EU do? It says, we're going to take that decision-making ability away from individual countries in case they do put it to a vote, and we're going to put it in the unelected body's hands. That's the unelected body of the EU.
And Sean B says, hope Alberta sends Carney and his luxury butter packing when he shows his weasel beak at the Stampede. Again, you have a week to plan. At least bring some flags, I would say.
He's gonna go early morning when nobody's there. It's gonna be quarantined off.
Yeah, cordoned off, and then they'll have the typical pictures of them grilling something for like 2 seconds, and then he can leave. He just needs the picture.
Yeah.
To say he went. But now let's go into, speaking of going, to Alberta and the world. And starting out with a story that you added, I think, last minute almost.
Yeah, I added this last minute because the result of this is supposed to come in tomorrow. This will be absolutely massive. This is one of the big Supreme Court decisions coming out.
Nick Sorter says, quote, breaking, the Supreme U.S. Court has indicated tomorrow, Tuesday, will be the final opinion announcement of this term, meaning that we expect the landmark birthright citizenship decision at 10 a.m. Eastern. So that would be, what?
And we will
7
be
a.m.?
we will be reporting on this tomorrow. You can guarantee that. The EU is taking the sovereignty away from all of its countries and flooding them with more mass immigration. This could really help do the opposite. There's been a series of landmark cases when it comes to immigration that have mostly gone in Donald Trump's favor.
Now we have another one coming up, which is birthright citizenship. And we're the only country in the world that has it. You step into our country and you're all of a sudden a citizen. You come in a certain way. This was not meant for Chinese billionaires to have their children become citizens of our country. This was meant, or other rich people, poor people. This was meant for the babies of slaves. This was signed right after the Civil War. You look at the dates alone, immediately after. This was having to do with the babies of slaves. And people have used it. And if this is allowed to stand, it will be a disaster economically for our country. And you'll have 25% of the people coming into our country coming in through birthright citizenship, and we won't have any control.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And they managed to change some of the founding documents at one point because they wanted to make sure that Native Americans had special rights and privileges, and that changing of that language within those documents is what the left is really trying to pitch as the Supreme Court to go against Trump here.
I'm sorry, I found this really funny. I really don't know who this person is, but I thought this was a pregnant lady until I saw the pants and the hands. Sorry, I had to point that out. But next, let's go to WikiLeaks 1.0 says, quote, "It's official, the U.S. confirms the New World Order." U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying Russia, China, and Iran are not going to come from outside our hemisphere to stabilize our region in our own backyard, not under President Trump.
And this is just not words coming from Rubio. There's documents backing all this up. Their new military doctrine, economic doctrine, they're focused on the Western Hemisphere, especially with the success they haven't had in Iran. They're going to double down on this doctrine, and they realize they're going to have to break Canada's back to get them on board because they're the only real big holdout at this point.
And again, this isn't new. If you go back to the November
this is
document,
a new clip.
No, the clip is,
Yeah.
but the strategy of the Western Hemisphere and actually protecting and looking towards actually restabilizing, I would say, the Western Hemisphere, that comes from their national security strategy that was released last November. And if you read it, you'll see every single thing that they've done makes sense, and then you'll know what comes after too.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at what countries they want to develop as the new Europe. And right now it looks like Argentina. There is a lot of investments, a lot of high profile U.S. citizens like Peter Thiel getting citizenship and investing within Argentina right now. Mexico would be another spot I think they would hone in on, but not with the far left ideologue that they currently have in power. Even though she's cooperating, they're going to really want to make their investments, I think, in South America right now.
Yeah, I would also say Chile and probably Colombia now because of the ties that they have with him too.
States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry.
Well, we don't need to. First, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific
What's that?
oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela since 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Let's talk big picture.
And Rubio and JD Vance are going to be a killer combination if they can just hash it out and figure who's going to be president and vice president. I really hope JD Vance gets the presidential slot and Marco Rubio the vice presidential slot, only because of Marco Rubio's previous history of being a neocon for decades. He seems to have made a transition, but you never really know. That's why I want to kind of see JD Vance in that main spot.
I will also say on that Venezuela point of the Maduro government and the stealing that they've done, they're after the earthquake, and again, our hearts go out to the people of Venezuela that are dealing with that, but after the earthquake, the current government is still trying to steal a lot of the money that is being given as aid.
Yeah.
Which is, of course. Eric Doherty says, quote, "President Trump is going on a full crusade against communism. He's prepared all his life for this, saying communism is the greatest threat to our country since World War I, World War II, Pearl Harbor, or 9/11.
Yeah, and he's got to be looking at Mark Carney with a lot of this as well. But he's talking in this context, obviously, what happened with the New York elections, what's happening in the Colorado elections. But he realizes a lot of these NGOs are actually based out of Canada.
A democratic socialist.
Well, it should make it easier for Republicans because most of the nation is composed of sane people. They don't want to, if you look throughout history, go back thousands of years, you've always had socialism and communism by different names. It's never ever worked. It's not going to work this time.
A democratic.
And the problem is what you're seeing happen in the left now is you're seeing the knives out for each other. You're having the traditional liberals versus the communists and the socialists. The problem with the traditional liberals, they tried to appeal to everybody and they eventually appealed to nobody, and they lost their defining identity that once defined them. They no longer have anything to kind of offer to the people. Communism and socialism has a very strong identity, and that's why they're able to get what little people are left on the left to go over to them. And they're becoming really the mechanism of power within the left. And we've been seeing this kind of happen over the last 5-10 years. Now, the right hasn't had that same division. There has been a little bit of division, but there are fundamental founding principles that is holding the right together.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, Quantum Guard says, quote, President Trump just dropped a brutal reality check on our quote unquote allies, telling them to fight for yourself. America is done holding your hand.
Oh, it is.
Well, we have a coalition for them, but they should have been up here a long time ago. And they're affected. The amazing thing is we don't need the Hormuz Strait. We don't need it. We don't need it at all. We have so much oil. Our country is not affected by this. We have twice the amount of oil as Saudi Arabia or Russia, and soon it'll be 3 times the amount. How close are you getting?
Because of Venezuela.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be very interesting. How long are they actually willing to protect Canada and things like that? So,
especially when they don't fully have to anymore.
Well,
because Canada is essentially kicking them out.
Well, with Canada, it comes down to a lot less protecting them militarily, because I don't think anybody's coming into the Western Hemisphere, but more economically when countries start having knives out for them.
I mean, through the north, China, Russia, you never know who Canada will now have to allow because they don't have ways to defend themselves. But now let's finish with comments. Rage Against Machine says, yeah, photo op, then leave. Carney can't flip a pancake either. When has he ever tried to even, has he ever had to even cook for himself? And again, we know his culinary standards are very high because when he takes planes, he spends, what was it, $175,000 for 3 flights and just for the meals of those flights. So yeah, essentially this is what I expect him to do, but I hope he's there at least long enough to hear people either yelling at him Alberta independence or telling him about Alberta independence, or at least waving a flag close to his face so he sees it. Southern Gent Phil, hello, says, thank you, Nat and Guy. Stay strong. You too. And Alberta, stay strong and free as well. Dal Robinson, hello, says, hi, Nat and Guy. Imagine North Central South America become United Americas. I mean, they're not that far away. It's the shield of the Americas right now.
Yeah, I keep a very close eye on what's happening in Central America, South America, and Mexico, and it's been absolutely amazing, the changes that have been happening under Trump. Trump's doing more as the American president to clean up the entire Western Hemisphere than the presidents of their own countries. Now, he's getting a lot of cooperation, so that's helping, but he seems like he's the one putting in the game plan and pressing them for changing their countries to clean up organized crime and other things so they can have an economic future within the new Western Hemisphere. I really do think portions of either South America or Central America are going to become the new Europe. Europe has gone down a dark path, and I don't know if there is any turning it around. If Trump can clean up organized crime within Central and South America, there's real hope that there will be a new Europe born within the Western Hemisphere.
Well, and I was going to say, it's because he understands how important it is to have a strong region that he can actually depend on and rely upon if he also wants to make America more independent by itself and more self-reliant too. He needs a strong lower half of the continent.
Well, a lot of people don't know the history of Argentina as well. It used to be an extremely rich country, one of the richest countries in the world, and extremely well developed. It looks a lot like Europe in a lot of their cities. So does Chile. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, they've had their issues before, but
it's going to be interesting if they can't. I'm just talking about the way it looks, the way that it used to be economically. It could be a real powerhouse.
Mm-hmm. And Stephen Jensen, thank you so much for the $5 super chat saying Carney and his wife need serious plastic surgery. It's not like they can't afford it. I don't think plastic surgery can fix that, honestly.
Well, somebody was saying Carney can't flip pancakes, but yes. I don't know. I think he might be okay at it because he's always standing like this. He can just flip them.
That too. But I said his culinary standards are way too high. $175,000 too high. And lastly, thank you so much, Stephen Johnson. Though lastly, Philip Vespa says, people forget that the best president in my lifetime got the UAE to leave OPEC. He has a plan and Canada would be wise to follow it. I just at this point really want to know what's going to happen when Canada doesn't and just see the fallout from afar.
Yeah.
And Alberta can do the same if they're not shackled to Canada.
I've actually been watching some fringe interviews, some older ones, as well as some more recent ones from people from the Trump administration talking about what the USMCA was and what the deal before that was. And they're really identifying that as a globalist contract to keep the United States boxed in. So it may very well come to a complete end here in a minute. I was really on the path of they'll go year to year. And I think they'll still do that at least until after the midterms. Depending on how the midterms go, it could be a complete cancellation of the USMCA.
Well, you were talking about OPEC. But,
Yeah, I know.
okay.
But that OPEC's also another one of those.
But now, actually, let's go to RUMBLE. The show continues over there. But before we head over there all together, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you there. There's a 30-second wait screen, and then we show up. Username is this one.
Adios.
Let's get ready to